Hello, Haunted Family. Welcome back. Story 1. My apartment. The apartment complex I lived in is 50 plus years old. The apartment to the right of me has been vacant for some time. And downstairs, underneath the vacant apartment, is my neighbor Annie. Annie has been telling me for the past few months that she's been hearing stuff going on in that apartment above her. The floors are really old and creaky, so one is able to hear very easily if someone is walking around in the apartment. She has told me that she hears people using the bathroom, walking around the living room, being intimate with each other, and various other things. At first, I thought she was making it all up, until a few weeks ago. I was down in her apartment. That night, her mom, aunt, and grandson were staying at her place, along with her brother and son. So I was down there with them, eating dinner and talking and having a good time. Her grandson is 2 years old. Very light and small. He was doing some kung fu fighting with her son. You know how kids are. And all of a sudden, I heard someone running from the bathroom all the way to the front door. They were almost stomping. I immediately looked up at the ceiling and then looked at her grandson to see where he was at. I asked her mom if she had heard that too. She said yes. Her mom had gotten there the day before, and she told me that even though that apartment was empty, no one lived there, she had been hearing noises from day one of her being there. About 2 weeks ago, I was laying in my bed, playing a game on my cell phone. It was around 1 a.m. or so. Now, the vacant apartment has the same layout as my apartment. My bedroom wall touches the vacant bedroom wall. So our bedrooms are right next door to each other. And the walls are paper thin. You can almost hear anything louder than a whisper. I was laying there, and all of a sudden, I heard what sounded like someone opening up the closet in the empty apartment. Immediately after that, I heard what sounded like someone either entering or exiting the closet. Then, I heard someone knock on the wall separating the bedrooms. 2 knocks. Unmistakable. I jumped out of my bed, grabbed my cell phone, and called Annie. I asked her if she had heard anybody in the closet. I told her that someone had knocked on the wall. Me being me, I knocked back. No one returned that knock. After her mom and her family left, I went down to Annie's apartment. I talked to her and her son until about 2 a.m., and all was quiet in that apartment. And all of a sudden, we heard what sounded like someone thumping around in her kitchen. Apparently, her son had been hearing someone moving glasses around. Someone sitting on the bed while he was trying to sleep. Her brother had heard someone in the closet moving coat hangers around. They once put a recorder in there and recorded whatever it was for several minutes. All they heard was the clothes hangers moving around. Another apartment in the building is supposedly haunted. The family that used to live there eventually moved right next door. But one of the daughters that lived there told me a few months ago that she'd been having these dreams about finding 3 dead people in her apartment. And now some guy named Timmy talks to her. She hears whispers. One time, the heater in that apartment turned on by itself and caught the couch on fire. Glasses break. Weird phone calls with no one on the other end. The obligatory lights coming on and off by themselves. I know I've felt things in my own apartment. I hear walking, which, even though the walls and floors are really thin, I can easily tell that they're in my apartment. I have sensed a face being very, very close to mine while I'm sleeping. I'm always too scared to open my eyes. I see things out of the corner of my eye. Sometimes it gets so bad. I get so tired of hearing or seeing things that I can't fully see, if that even makes sense, that I yell at them to stop. I can only imagine the things that have happened here in the last 50 plus years that this complex has been around. Story 2. My house. We've been in our house for about 4 years. The house was vacant for a few years before we moved in. It was a really old house built in the 1950s. And from what I heard from our neighbors, who were the original owners of their houses, there was only one family that lived there before us. I don't remember the realtor telling us that 2 people died in our house. I heard that from our next door neighbors when we had been settled in for a few months. They said the lady that lived here before us had a husband and raised 2 kids here. She took care of her sister in this house until her sister died. She also took care of her husband when he was old and sick until he died. The kids grew up and moved away, and she was left alone for quite a few years. A few people told me stories about her because I've been so curious about what went on here ever since things started happening in our house. My neighbors tell me that she was a great lady who everyone liked. She did things for her neighbors all the time. When she got a bit older and she was all alone, she began to experience Alzheimer's. Nobody realized what was happening to her. Everyone in the neighborhood just thought she was getting old. She used to do all kinds of crazy things, like go into their backyards and try to get into their houses. After a year of her getting steadily worse, her kids finally put her in a nursing home, and she died there. So she didn't die in our house, but her sister and her husband did. The first thing that started happening in our house happened in our kids' rooms. My son's bedroom door would shut by itself. We would all be in the living room, and we'd hear his door shut. Now, the carpet was really thick in our house, and the doors were old, so you could hear the hinges really well. It was really hard to shut the doors, having them slide across the thick carpet. In our daughter's bedroom, the light would just come on by itself. It's a light switch by the door. It's not a lamp. And it would just flick on randomly throughout the day and night. At first, we thought that she was leaving her light on, but she insisted that she wasn't. After we came home one night and her light was on, we kind of got mad at her, and she insisted that it was not her. So I started making a point of checking the light myself whenever we'd all go out for the evening. Then I knew for sure that it wasn't her leaving her light on. Something was turning her light on. My kids and I have never actually seen anything unusual. We've just experienced weird things like the door and the light. My husband, however, has seen something. He'd never admit that it was a ghost. Out of the 3 of us, I truly believe that he is the most psychic. And he's also the biggest non-believer. On more than one occasion, we've pulled up to the house, and he's just freaked out. Made us all stay in the car because he swore that he'd seen something in the house. And he'd go in the house and he'd check the whole place before he'd let us come in. He says that when this happens, he checks every little spot that someone or something could hide, and he never finds anything. One night, in the middle of the night, he felt somebody sit down on our bed by our feet. He said he could feel the blankets pushed down on his feet. I woke up one night and I swear I heard someone knocking on the wall. I was too scared to get up and check, but I'm sure I was fully awake for a long time after that. Another time, my family was all watching TV. I was just in the hallway and I heard someone banging on one of the walls. I thought one of them was trying to get my attention in the most rude of ways. So I went into the living room and asked them what was up. But they didn't know what I was talking about, and they didn't hear anything. Story 3. High school days. Way back when I was in high school, the days before cell phones were common, my friends were coming over to pick me up from my house one night. We had made plans at school for them to pick me up at about 7. At 6, my parents said I had to come with them to do something. I totally forgot to call my friends and tell them. They came to my house at 7, called the house phone, and no one answered. There were 4 of them in the car, and they all 4 tell the exact same story. They were about to back out of the driveway when they saw someone peek through the blinds from the bedroom on the top floor to the right of the house. And that was my bedroom. So they assumed it was me, just screwing around with them. So they waited a bit longer, honked a few times, and they saw this thing peek through the blinds at least 5 more times. We got home at about 7:10, 7:15. They were all still in our driveway. One of my friends came over and said they thought I was messing with them. And then they were like, "So, who's staying in your room?" I told them no one. No one was home. We were all gone. They sat there, stone cold faces. And then they told me what they had seen repeatedly over the last 15 or 20 minutes. At first, we all thought it was a burglar or something. We called the cops. They arrived and law enforcement went in and checked our house. No signs of breaking in. Nothing was out of place. Nothing was stolen. Our house had an alarm on it, and the alarm hadn't been triggered. So there was no way that someone could have got into our house. My family, my friends, and the cops all kind of stood around for a few minutes, trying to make sense of the situation. My friends swore up and down, and still do to this day, that they couldn't have imagined what they saw. All 4 of them saw the same thing. It wasn't dark out, not particularly. So it couldn't have been their eyes playing tricks on them. To this day, none of us can make sense of the situation, but we still talk about what happened. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to. Drop me a comment down below. I love chatting with you. And as always, thanks for listening. Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio.